Introducing the African Diaspora News Channel app, your gateway to stories that's overlooked by the corporate mainstream media.
At African Diaspora News Channel, we cover stories that don't receive mainstream attention, and we serve as the voice to the global Black community. We are committed to informing and educating through the power of media, connecting the African diaspora one story at a time.
With our platform, we're helping to end injustice by exposing it.
Join us in standing for excellence in journalism and serving our community. Download the African Diaspora News app today.
And we are live. Peace, 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 dear family. Thank you so much for tuning into African Diaspora News Channel. You are with Vicki Dillard, and I'm so pleased to be making history today by being live here on African Diaspora News Channel. I'm so honored to be with you today on this particular venue, on this particular day. Beloved, do me a huge favor, would you? If you would, everybody be sure to give us a big thumbs up, and share the broadcast. Essentially, in modern media, when you do that, you act as advertisement and you allow others to know that we're here. So that's why we ask that you do that. Thank you so very much. I am so pleased that you're with us today, family. We have a very, very brief but exciting topic today, dear family. I'm sure many of you all already know that we have a lot going on here in these United States of America. I know this has really been the year of the elections for many countries around the world. And of course, the United States is no exception. Of course, we've had major brouhahas that have taken place. Recent attempt on Donald Trump's life, they say. And then, of course, with the incapacity of the current president, Mr. Joe Biden, beloved, and the humiliation and the embarrassment that he has been to us around the world, we see now that his VP, Kamala Harris, is now in the running for president. And I'm telling you, it is a hot mess in America, where it is very, very important, beloved, that when we are dealing with the people that are requesting us to give them power by and through our vote, which is why, by the way, we put much more emphasis on the Democrat Party, because the overwhelming number of Black Americans vote Democrat. So necessarily, if you're giving a particular side the power to change your condition, you're giving them something that you're not giving the other side, and they are still refusing to do right by you. Instead, they use your vote for everybody else but you. Then, of course, we're going to give them a level of criticism that we're not going to give the other side. Talk black to me, somebody. Family, with Kamala Harris, in determining who you're going to vote for, I want to remind you of her record. Are y'all hearing me today? And she certainly has one. Now, there is a phrase that the hood, that the Black grassroots, that the common man and the common woman here in the United States uses when we're discussing politics. Sometimes you'll hear us say things like, I'm B1. What does B1 stand for? B1 means Black first. What does that mean? That means that regardless to label, socioeconomic, your religious label, your economic label, your political label, we put the collective interest of our people first, right? Well, unfortunately, too many of our people are not B1. Unfortunately, too many of our people are not Black first. They're D1, not B1. What is D1, Vicki? D1 is Democrat first. They put the bones and biscuits. They put the idea of having a job in the Democrat administration above the well-being of their own people. And we're not having that. Now, with Kamala Harris, I want to remind you of her policy. She was prosecuted for San Francisco, and then she received a promotion as the Attorney General for the entire state of California. And in both high-level positions, she had terrible anti-Black policies and laws that she chose to enforce. Well, she had the nerve to brag about one of them. And that was when she was promoting jailing, locking up the parents of children in school that committed truancy. I want you, beloved, to get ready to watch this very brief clip of presidential candidate now, Democrat presidential candidate Kamala Harris, bragging about locking up parents as she proposes this particular policy. And be sure, again, to give us a big thumbs up, share to let everybody know we are actually live today. Watch this clip.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it. And this is what we did. We recognized that in that initiative, as a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school district has got a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school. So, to that end, on my letterhead, now let me tell you something about my letterhead. When you're the DA of a major city in this country, usually the job comes with a badge. And there is often an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. So I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district, outlining the connection that was statistically proven between elementary school truancy, high school dropouts, who will become a victim of crime, and who will become a perpetrator of crime. We sent it out to everyone. A friend of mine actually called me and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's gonna put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect.
Family, did you hear that? Did you hear her laugh about locking up the guardians, the parents of the children that she claims she's meant to serve? It is impossible to overemphasize the absolute anti-Black and diabolical nature of that. Now, in the event a handful of you might be out there to say, well, some parents need to be held accountable for that. Some parents need to take the responsibility of raising their children more seriously and ensuring that they receive an education. Family, let me help you understand something. Yes, parents should take very seriously the education of their children. But the way to do that is not locking up mama and daddy, the one that's responsible for ensuring that the child has a roof over their head. Let me get my gavel on that. For those of you that don't know, the Vicki Show is a home of the hand claps and the gavel raps. I use this to emphasize points. I wanted you all to know that our word matters by using the gavel. This is not just something for judges and lawmakers. I want you to know that your word matters. Listen, you don't do that by locking up and giving a record to the custodians of the children that you claim that you're concerned about. You don't throw the key away and lock up the parents to ensure that there's not food on the table, the people that are responsible for providing food for the children. Are y'all hearing me today? That is absolutely diabolical. The humiliation that comes with that. What if there's no grandmother? What if there's no other family member that you can entrust to take care of your child? Moreover, there are systemic reasons for which children often commit truancy. And it's not everybody, so let's keep that in mind. Now, this is something that really burns me up. I'm from Mississippi. I live in the wild, wild west in America now. And I'm an old school girl. So I was reared, of course, by my mother and my maternal grandparents in the house. And one of the things, and my father the first few years, but most of our lives, my maternal grandparents and my mother. And one of the things my grandmother used to say, that burns me up. Talk black to me, somebody. That really upsets me. Why do I say that? You've got to understand that in the United States, what exactly is jail? What exactly is prison? Don't take Sister Vicki's word for it. Just in case you think I'm embellishing and Sister Vicki, she just hit that gavel and screaming. Just in case you think that I'm overdoing it. Let's get real technical and real legal. What does the U.S. Constitution say about it? Let me remind you what the current law in this country is. The 13th Amendment, Section 1. Are y'all listening? Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except, somebody put in the chat, except. Somebody put, there's an exception to slavery now. Except as punishment for a crime, whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted and shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. For example, see Clyde versus United States 197 U.S. 207. Y'all know the Sister Vicki, I come with the receipts. What does that mean in layman's terms? It means, beloved, that the current Amendment 13 to the Constitution, by the way, that was the first, that's considered to be the first of three, what they call Reconstruction amendments. After Reconstruction, these amendments were implemented, which is why they're called amendments, which means there was an additional modification to the Constitution, right? Because the Constitution was insufficient for the appropriate rights of a free man and woman, such as Black folks. They allegedly freed us, right, from slavery. Watch this. The amendment stipulates that there is an exception to slavery. Layman's terms, what does that mean? It forbids chattel slavery across the United States and every territory under its control, except as criminal punishment. So what does that mean? For those of you that might be out there say something silly like, well, don't commit the crime, don't commit punishment, and you won't be enslaved. Let me tell you something. Your open enemy is so slick. They're so diabolical in how they use their knowledge and wisdom. They create laws for you to violate. Let me say it like this. But before they create the law, they create crimes. Somebody say, prove it, Vicki. Somebody say, prove it, Vicki. The United States, all of the United States, both North and South, when you're reading your history books, they want you to believe that somehow the Civil War was about the North and the South. The North was against slavery and the South was for slavery. They want you to believe that that was the gist of it. But they're not telling you the overwhelming number of white Americans in both the North and the South. They had no problem with the enslavement of Black folks. Let me give you one reference. Get the book, Forced into Glory. Forced into Glory lets you know that Abraham Lincoln said on the record that if it was up to him, if he could keep the states, the Union intact without freeing the slaves, he would do it. Now you see why they don't want you to control your own history books. I'm going to say it again. Abraham Lincoln stated on the record that if he could keep the United States of America in its form at that time intact without freeing the slaves, he would do it. So what was all of this about? Except for a small handful of Caucasians in the United States, the Quaker types, they were the minority that believed that. The overwhelming number of Northerners were totally for it. They were jealous of the Southerners in the South. Y'all, come on now. I'm your sister with the curly braids. I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm going to give you the receipts. I'm going to give you the facts. Are y'all listening to me? Are y'all listening to me? I said, as you hit that thumbs up button, share, family. I said that the North and the South, the Civil War was over the fact that the North was jealous of the Southerners' political power. Why? Because the Southerners were unfairly using some of the numbers of the slaves to benefit them in terms of representations when it comes to Congress. One of the things that they did when they considered us to be 3/5 of a human being, not only had they always considered us to be property, but there was also a political move. 3/5 of a human being, so they wouldn't be able to count you as a full number so that you couldn't use those numbers to benefit folks later. Just like when you do the census in the United States, beloved, and when you find out the numbers on that, the number of people and people groups, that also determines how many, for example, in the House of Representatives, the lower house of Congress, you get. See, the lower house of Congress different from different districts. Every state in the United States only gets 2 senators. That's the upper house, the Senate. Yes? But your number of House of Representatives differs based on the population needs. So the South was being slick. In a similar way to that, there were political reasons similar to that. So the North was jealous because the South had much more political power than the North. Watch this. And much more money because slavery was big business. So that's why they were really warring their brothers and sisters. Again, except for a small number of Caucasians, the Quaker type folks, other than that small number that believed morally that it was wrong and unjust, the vast number were all for it. So don't you get it twisted. I want you to keep that in mind with the current legal definition of slavery, because they abhorred the fact of losing their most precious property. Because how many of you all know that the original stock in the United States, the stock was slaves? How many of y'all know that? Before you could get your Amazon and your Apple stock, how many of you know that our mothers and fathers were the stock on Wall Street? How many of you all knew that? Don't play with it. So keep that in mind. So in order to find a slick way to claim they freed us, they created crimes. Let me give you an example of what crime they created. They told you that loitering or simply hanging out after they freed us from slavery with no resources, no land, no home, backtracked on the promise of the 40 acres and a mule, except for a couple of people in our family that end up getting it. But for the most part, they backtracked on that. They said that if you was just hanging out, that was a crime. They were happy about that, so they were able to put you in prison and then turn around and use your labor. You know what another term for that is called, family? Convict leasing. Look it up. This is how slick and dirty they are with their laws. That's what they call nowadays loopholes, that your lobbyist use big money to get into the ear of your Congress people to make laws and rules and regulations that only benefit a small group of people. Are y'all hearing me? Why am I giving you this history in the context of Kamala laughing about imposing a policy to jail parents? I want you to understand she is advocating modern slavery. That's not a good idea. And then when you look at the fact that it's not all of the students and not the majority of the students, but the number of students that had truancy issues were having issues domestically and at home. And in some instance, I want you to look this up. Do you know that a handful of the students were missing from school because they actually had medical issues? And in some of the instances, these medical issues were told to the school and the school had them on record, but Kamala Harris didn't care nothing about it, which is one of the reasons why she retracted. One of the things I want you to take note of is this. Let me tell you how committed to this diabolical policy this woman was. Can y'all give me a few more minutes? Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so excited to be with you live today, family. Listen. She knew exactly what she was doing. It was such a problem that her own staff, did y'all hear her say that her own team, her own staff that helps her to implement the policies and to carry out the responsibilities of her office, they were concerned and objected. And they even told her with the upcoming election that she might have, that her opponent may actually use that crazy policy against her. She knew exactly what she was doing. One article that I want to tell you about from a few years ago that recapped is The Guardian. How many of y'all know The Guardian? The Guardian is an international, mostly a European publication, right? A piece from 2019 that's headlined, Kamala Harris laughed about jailing parents over truancy, but it's not funny. That was a piece that was written by Nathan Robinson. One of the things that I need you all to understand that they point out in this is that when this unearthed piece of footage came out, he talks about the fact in paragraph 2 that she was speaking at the Commonwealth Club in 2010. Of course, that's what you just viewed. When Harris was district attorney of San Francisco, it says that because a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime, she decided to treat the parents with absentee children as criminals. The article talks about the fact that her cheerfully recounting this, the story of sending an attorney from her office to intimidate a homeless single mother. Think about that. Y'all don't move past this. I need you to understand just what's behind these diabolical policies that disproportionately affect Black folk. She was cheerfully recounting the story of sending an attorney from her office to intimidate a homeless mother whose children were missing from school. They're giving us the context of this. She smiles as she recalls how she instructed her subordinates to, quote, look really mean so that the mother would take the threat of jail seriously. In separate footage, it says Harris mocks those on the left. So y'all sitting out here bragging about the fact that she's a Democrat. You're bragging about the fact that she's supposed to be a liberal. She's supposed to be a voice for the people, right? But this article from 2019 highlights the fact that she, Kamala Harris, is mocking the liberals. In separate footage, quote, she says things like, quote, build schools. In the separate footage, Harris mocks those on the left who say things like build schools and not jails, and put more money into education and not prisons, suggesting that they are naive sloganeers who do not understand crime prevention. It says here we see the limits of prosecutorial mindset, like the old slogan, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I want you all to understand that clip. Now, I got to get ready to go here in a few minutes. I got to get ready to teach my mastermind school in just a moment. But I want you to listen to just a brief excerpt I want to read to you from an article when Miss Kamala Harris became Attorney General of the entire state. Remember, she was pushing that policy as well as some other diabolical policies when she was a prosecutor for San Francisco, right? That was just for that particular region. But then remember, she got a promotion when she won the election as the Attorney General for the entire state. How many of you all know that California is one of the richest, most populous states here in the United States, right? This piece that I'm reading from the American Prospect is headlined how Kamala Harris fought to keep non-violent prisoners locked up. Can y'all give me about 5 more minutes? Can y'all give me a quick 5 more minutes? Now, this is within the context of her excited about jailing on a local level mamas and daddies, homeless mamas and daddies. Some of them. Mamas and daddies who have children that have health issues and they're in the hospital. And yes, of course, there are a few exceptions to that, but I'm saying this is a part of the truancy issue that we can't ignore. I want you to understand just how deeply entrenched modern slavery is important to her. Look what this says. How Kamala Harris fought to keep nonviolent prisoners locked up. How many of you all know that as California Attorney General, she spent years subverting a 2011 Supreme Court ruling requiring the state to reduce its prison population? We can stop right there. The highest court in all of the United States. We're not talking about the local courts. We're not talking about the state court. We're not talking about even the federal court. We're not talking about the regional federal jurisdiction. We're not talking about a district court. We're not talking about the state court that governs the state and local jurisprudence facilities and institutions. The highest court in the land They upheld a ruling that told her that they needed to reduce the prison population for the state of California. She spent years subverting that 2011 Supreme Court ruling. Did y'all hear what I said? It says the overseeing judicial panel, listen real close, nearly found the state, are y'all listening? In contempt of court. That means, beloved, that the law enforcer and chief attorney for the entire state, which is why they're called attorney general, the attorney that's for the general public, that's Vicki Dillard's easy definition. I have my own dictionary, not the dictionary, the dictionary. The dictionary is my book of words. She, beloved, is supposed to be the attorney for the common people of the entire state of California. The Supreme Court, who rarely ever suggests reducing a prison population. That's rare and almost unheard of. Kamala Harris spent years, along with the former Governor Brown, subverting or undermining that decision. Now, let me tell you how bad this was. Again, I got a couple more minutes and I'm out of here, okay? We're keeping it today very brief, okay? By the way, family, you do not want to miss Brother Phil. He's going to be live. I know y'all see him on a regular basis coming live here on African Diaspora News Channel, so be sure to stay tuned for that in a few hours, okay? I know you all are going to love it. Our founder of this absolutely amazing network that's ship-shaping the planet, so be sure to tune in and be looking out for that. Watch this. The piece highlights something very interesting. Are y'all listening? At the time, Senator Kamala Harris, a leading candidate, that's when she was running a few years ago for president the first time when she humiliated herself against Joe Biden and the rest of them. Watch this. It says, leading candidate, she repeatedly and openly, keep those two words in mind, repeatedly and openly, repeatedly and openly. Kamala Harris repeatedly and openly did what, Vicki? Defied the U.S. Supreme Court orders to reduce overcrowding in California prisons while serving as the state's attorney general, according to legal documents reviewed by the prospects. So you don't need to take Vicki's spin for nothing. You don't need to wonder if Vicki's just bamming a gavel and exacerbating and embellishing your story. What I'm saying to you is backed up by a legal court document, a legal court docket, a record. Watch this. Working in tandem with Governor Jerry Brown, Harris and her legal team, as I just mentioned, filed motions that were condemned by who? Not just the general public, but by judges and legal experts. Do you all understand in these next couple minutes that when you have judges and legal experts who are your colleagues, her colleagues in the law, when you have them openly criticizing you, how many of you all know you must be doing something wrong? That's a code that they rarely break, family. Watch this quickly. The judges and legal experts condemned her acts as what? Obstructionist, bad faith, and nonsensical. Woo! Y'all think we clown her? What do you think about multiple judges and legal experts that were both Republican and Democrat? Even suggesting that the Supreme Court, they saying that Kamala's office, her motions, suggested that the Supreme Court lacked jurisdiction to even order her to reduce the prison population for California. That's some crazy stuff. Watch this, y'all. Real quick. I got 1.5 minutes. It says this extreme resistance to a Supreme Court ruling was done to prevent the release of fewer than 5,000 non-violent offenders whom multiple courts had cleared as presenting next to no risk of recidivism or threat to public safety. What is recidivism? Recidivism is just a fancy word for saying repeatedly going back and forth into prison. They said that these folks were almost zero risk of recidivism and almost zero threat to public safety. This is who she was fighting, thousands of them, to keep them locked up. Watch this very quickly. It says that she was seesawing back and forth with the courts, right? I want y'all to know this. Do you all know, and I'm looking for this one particular section because this right here is going to blow your mind. The verdict, split verdict, in a 5-4 decision, family. Are y'all listening? With the conservative Anthony Kennedy. Forgive me for screaming. That's at Mississippi coming out. This is supposed to be your liberal attorney general, right? In your liberal big old state of California, right? In a split verdict, 5-4, with a liberal judge, Anthony Kennedy, he joined the court's liberals, upholding a lower court mandate. Kennedy wrote the majority opinion in the case. Guess what this conservative said about your liberal attorney general? He said, in a majority opinion, he included an array of gruesome details from inside of those prisons and condemning the state for facilitating, quote, needless suffering and death. For those of you that don't know, her office defied the courts, delayed, actually tried to get the population increased. She wanted to keep some in there, some prisoners, so that they could use the prisoners to fight fires in California so they could save money. They said 5 to 6 deaths were recurring every so many days in California because of this law. And they said that suicidal inmates were particularly disadvantaged. And that how in one particular city, I forget how many, 100 and some odd prisoners, not 100 some odd, I forget which number it was, but a large number of prisoners had to share one toilet. Kamala was fighting, knowing that prisoners were dying. She was fighting for years to keep them locked up. Keep that in mind. So when you make your decision, what am I saying? Yes, I was one of the first ones that said that it might be a good chance that Kamala might become run for president. I was one of the first voices in independent Black grassroots media that said that I believed that it was likely Joe Biden was going to get out and that how the Democrats had actually planned this for a long time. I'm on record as saying that. So I'm not saying that she may not become president. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm simply saying we're going to hold her accountable. And I'm trying to tell you all, stop being tethered to just the Democrat Party. Hold her accountable just like you will the Republicans. And keep this in mind. Thank you so much for tuning in, beloved. This is such a joy. I think we made history today, didn't we? What a privilege and an honor to be with you here today on African Diaspora News Channel. Again, stay tuned for dear brother Fields, who's coming on in a couple of hours live. And of course, be sure to tune in on a regular basis so that you can see the content of my beloved colleagues that are giving you content literally from around the world. You don't want to miss it. How many of you all know that sometimes some of the, for whatever reason, some of the platforms is difficult for some of the folks to even know that we're here, their ups and downs and so forth that we won't get into right now. But when you download the app, beloved, that's an offline a platform for us. So be sure to subscribe to that. It's very economical. Plus, you're going to get content that's meant just for you. Tune in on a regular basis. So even if you don't get noticed, always check and look through the videos, beloved, for our content. My name is Vicki Dillard, beloved. What a privilege and an honor to be with you